Hey everybody, it's Chamber Matt from the South Kitsap Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our 2023 general election candidate interviews. There are 9 races happening in the South Kitsap area, 5 for the city of Port Orchard, and 3 for the South Kitsap School Board, and 1 for South Kitsap Fire and Rescue. The South Kitsap School District will also have a capital bond on the ballot in November. As part of the series, we reached out to all 18 candidates several times to schedule an interview. All but 3 of the candidates responded. We asked all the candidates in each race the same questions, and none of the candidates had the questions in advance. I let the candidates answer the questions as best they could. I then spliced together the interviews so that you could have a side-by-side comparison. Big disclaimer here, I am not a professional editor. We did these interviews on Zoom, so please be patient with my editing. The Chamber will also be hosting an information forum for the school bond on October 11th at 5:30 p.m. upstairs at Whiskey Gulch, and a candidate meet and greet on October 26th, also at 5:30 at Whiskey Gulch. Come on out, meet the candidates, and hear about the school bond. Ballots should come out sometime around October 20th, and they are due back to the ballot box by November 7th. Thanks for watching. Remember to vote and make an informed decision. Hey everybody, it is Chamber Matt, and today I am meeting with Mike Eslava, who is running for the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner. Is there a position number on this, Mike?
Position 3.
Position 3. Not that positions mean a whole lot, because it's not like anything is divvied up and there's territories per se. So everybody in South Kitsap votes on the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner position. I'm just going to take a minute to introduce Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Good. All right. So there we go. We did the mic thing. And what we're going to do for everybody is we're going to kind of bounce around. So I'm going to ask Mike a question, and then I'll move on, and we'll splice together the different candidates and the different answers. So I guess without any further ado, Mike, I guess we can go ahead and jump right in. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
So Mike, the first question is kind of the hardest sometimes, and that's simply, tell us about yourself and why do you think you're qualified to be a South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner?
Well, my name is Michael Eslava, and I have lived in the community for 71 years. I'm also 71 years old now, and soon to be 72 in January. I started as a firefighter for South Kitsap Fire and Rescue, or South Kitsap Fire District 7 in 1967. And one of the first things they did was got me so I could fight fire. And the second thing was so I could run our ambulance. And they at times would come to the high school, call it in advance, and get me out of class. And I would come run outside with my books and jump in the ambulance and go on a call. Situations have changed today. And I continued to with that for up to present time now. And in 2012, in April of 1978, I was elected South Kitsap Fire Commissioner for this position, and I am the incumbent. And since that time, I have worked diligently, and I have always maintained my personal information for my constituents to, if they ever have a question about what I did or why I voted this way or what's on the agenda, they have my cell phone, my email, my home phone. Call me, let's talk about it, and I'll explain my position on it. And I am currently in the position and am up for re-election. In my personal life, I am a married father of 3 glowing grown-up daughters. I have 5 grandchildren, and 2 of which we're helping to raise here in our home in Olalla. But I have been affiliated with the fire department. My daughters have been the pancake breakfast. I was one of the pancake makers, the dough makers. I was the Easter Bunny one year. I was involved at the Olalla Elementary School as the PTA president. I've been involved in the South Kitsap Southern Little League as a cook. I was the grill master in the kitchen. So I've been involved in my community. And one other thing that we have done while I was a career firefighter is I was involved in the Give Burns the Boot for burn injured children. And we raised, during my tenure there, we raised the most money in the entire state of Washington and we were awarded an award for that distinction. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Hey everybody, it's Chamber Matt, and today I am meeting with Robert McGee, who is running for the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner race in position number 3. Welcome, Robert. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Matt. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so there are 5 commissioners in South Kitsap Fire and Rescue. Robert, the process is pretty simple. I just have a series of questions, and I'll go ahead and ask the questions, and then I'm going to end up splicing you and Mike together so that we can get a side-by-side comparison. So if you're ready, let's roll.
Let's go ahead and get going.
All right, outstanding. So first question, the tough one is, just tell us about yourself and why do you think you're qualified to be a South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner?
Well, a little bit about myself. I've lived here since 1980 in South Kitsap, so I would be what you consider a local at this point. I've owned and operated a private fire protection sprinkler company that delves into the fire industry on the private side. So I do deal with the fire industry on a day-to-day basis with a different aspect from the business avenue of the industry. I also own Whiskey Gulch Coffee Pub down in Annapolis, and we've had that since 2012. I serve on the Chamber of Commerce board with a number of other folks there, and that's been a fun experience on that board. But as far as my experience level goes, I've been in the fire industry my whole career, and one of the things that I noticed with the commissioner's position is that there's not a whole lot of private sector people on the commission, and so for me, it was a good opportunity to take advantage of my skill sets in the fire industry and business and management and plop it over into that commission seat, because traditionally they come from the fire district. And so, for me, I like to see balanced commissions, kind of like the Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to have a different set of people on the Chamber of Commerce board. So when we come to solutions, we get a lot of different perspectives. And I think I bring that to the table for this position, coming from the private sector and not coming from the district itself, which is, like I said, traditionally where commissioners come from. And I think a lot of people have a misconception that you need to be from the fire district to be on the commission, and that's just not the case. So I want to bring some balance to that commission. I want to bring some, what ifs from outside of there. The fire district comes from a long line of history and tradition, but on the same token, we need to be able to ask questions that don't normally get asked, so we can get to some different solutions and keep their tradition of excellence up.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And so the first question that I have for you, the real first question is, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges facing South Kitsap Fire and Rescue?
Well, we have a couple of them. We have growth, uncontrolled growth with no sustainable for the emergency services, schools, fire department, police, everything that a vital service that they need. We don't get the funding to support those. And the growth is overrunning our potential to take care of the emergencies. Consequently, in the fire service, we have to call for mutual aid, where, like I said, I've been in the South Kitsap for 56 years, and we didn't use mutual aid when I was growing up and when I was fighting fire and doing emergency medicine. We didn't use mutual aid. We went from call to call, and that's the way we handled it. And now people won't, that's not acceptable. And we never had a delay like we are now because the calls have tripled. So that being the sustained growth with no way to pay for it.
In the last one. But what do you see are some of the biggest challenges facing South Kitsap Fire and Rescue?
Well, the big one lately, of course, was well promoted through the levy, and frankly, I've got to tip my hat to the administration there and some handful of firefighters that really stepped out there to do some outreach to the community, because that levy barely passed at 52%, and that's to address call volumes, staffing issues, and they really needed that. They failed the levy last November, so It took some chutzpah to run it again so soon. That traditionally hasn't been very successful for most districts that have to do that. But they did pass it. I think for me now, the most important thing is now we've got to prove to the 48% of people who didn't approve the levy that we're going to use those monies judiciously. We're going to use them as intended, and we've got to show them that we are going to solve those issues as we sold the levy on that premise to solve that problem. So I think that's kind of the number one thing getting in there is to make sure we do that.
So we talked about the bad, so to speak. What about the good? What do you see as some of the greatest opportunities facing South Kitsap Fire and Rescue?
We have, and we're in partnership and in conversation right now with various other agencies, not fire agencies, but members where we could actually come up with funding to support our agencies, an alternative method to constantly having to go out and ask our voters for monies to keep that $1.50. That's something that's always going to have to be there. And then the 50 cents for EMS, that's always going to be there. That's addressed in Title 52 of the RCWs in state of Washington, but it's a maximum of that. So if you plan to do any growth or improve your services, you have to come up with funding or sell a bond, and bonds aren't very popular in the area. So we have to come up with partners that will invest in our organization.
So switching gears from the challenges, we've got the opportunities. So what do you see as some of the great opportunities facing South Kitsap Fire and Rescue right now?
Well, I think one of the biggest opportunities is we can regain that trust of the community. We're in a position now to do that. I think go back to balance on the commission. I think having that balance will help do that. I think we need to look at alternative means for funding for the district. Like it or not, levies and bonds, when they go out, a lot of people don't like that. I actually find them to be really respectful. When you go out with a levy or a bond, you're asking the community's permission for their money to solve certain issues within the district. Whereas, the cities and counties, when they want your money, they tend to just take it, and they have ways to do that. So I do appreciate levies and bonds from that perspective. But that's really, the big thing is we've got to get the equipment that our firefighters need. That's going to be a big positive moving forward. And the staffing, their call volumes, as you saw through the levy, promoting the levy, their call volumes are the highest in the county. And they rely a lot on the ILAs or the other districts to help. And frankly, they probably benefit the most from that ILA. And we need to get back to where we don't need to rely on our other jurisdictions so much. So it's going to be a big positive if we can implement that levy in the manner we sold on. So, it's a service. So the biggest thing about this service, it's budgets and resources, and that's one thing we've got to really watch, run efficiently. And I think we're in a position to actually do that to where we can make the district more efficient, more effective through that staffing that's coming on. And I know they're working hard to bring on some new staff now. And come January 1st, I know they've got at least 12 coming on currently after attending the commission meeting yesterday. So, and we've got a lot of positive things that we can do for sure.
All right, thanks, Robert. So next question. So we're on question number 4 already, Mike, and things are moving right along, aren't they? So I told you there were not going to be any showstoppers here, but on a, I don't want to say a sensitive subject, but are there other ways the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue can operate more efficiently than they currently do?
I am right in the middle of looking at how we were just fortunate to pass our fire levy to return it to $1.50, and we're going to hire 21 new people. Now, the way to make that less encumbering on the agency is hire some, or bring on or promote up a new training officer or a second training officer that will allow those 21 to get on sooner rather than later, and focus on services that we're delivering, not on the other aspects of the fire agency right now. We need to provide a service to get our community back on board with South Kitsap Fire and Rescue.
Thanks, Robert. So the next question, and you touched on it, is the question of efficiency. So, and like I said, you did touch on it a little bit there. but what are some of the ways that you see the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue can operate more efficiently?
Well, we need to make sure we're not having any waste within the district. Now, coming as the outside, I'm at a loss to the incumbent, of course, because they've got that kind of insider knowledge. There's always things that get talked about outside the commission meeting. So, one of the first things I want to do when I get in there is really get myself up to speed so I can evaluate those budgets and resources to see where can we streamline them. Do we streamline them in cost by cutting things, or do we streamline them on operating them differently? So I don't honestly have all those answers because I haven't been in those talks and meetings with the district like the commissioners that are existing there have now. So can there be a more efficient use of funds? Of course, there's always a better way to use your funds. The other thing that I think really kind of falls into that, they need to be very aware of what's going on in their surroundings. They've got to watch what the county and their city doing a little more closely, because they're passing policies and implementing fees and stuff that actually impact the district. And it feels like the district a lot of times is playing catch up. The city implemented a long-term property tax exemption. Well, that hurts our fire district because now we're not getting those property tax revenues, and it forces us to look to alternative funding means when we lose those resources. So I think it's important that we have a government affairs watching that at the district, and I don't know that that's happening to the tune that it needs to now, because we want to make sure we're ahead of those things and either actively engaging to change those policies that could hurt the district, or we're actively engaging to stop those policies that might hurt the district, so we can fund ourselves appropriately and not have to go to the community so often to get those needs funded by the community, because that's where our money and resources come from.
All right, so if you had, I don't want to say a magic wand or a crystal ball, or if you could make any changes, if you had the sole authority to make changes, I mean, you're a commissioner, you're one of, is there 3 or are there 5 commissioners?
5.
So you're one of 5, but if you could, are there any changes that you would make to South Kitsap Fire and Rescue right now?
I would make us a lot during the levy push. We were very much out in the community and getting our name out. When I started, and through my entire career time at South Kitsap Fire and Rescue, I was always out there talking to people. Some of the best times I could have is to be at the store and shaking people's hand and inviting them to come to our meetings, come and talk to us, invite us to your meetings, let us tell you what we do, let us show you that we're not just a group of people that ride around on a big red fire engine or a big red ambulance and come see you when you're sick. We want to come see you when you're well. We want to make you feel comfortable. When we come to your house, no matter how terrible the situation is, we want you to understand that we're your friends and we're there to mitigate your problem, make your situation in your home at that time, which is a critical incident for you, make it better. And there's some we can't. Bottom line, we can't make it better, but we can do everything we can to put our arm around that wife or that mother or that child or that dad and just kind of tell them, here's how we can do this. And we have resources that we can help you and make sure that you are safe and that you're going to be okay. This is not for me just a political position. This is South Kitsap Fire and Rescue has been my heart for 56 years. I've been here. I've worked my hiney off. Days I never got to go to sleep or even stop for a meal until midnight, 1 o'clock. And you know what? Those were just flying days. And we just did our job because our community needed us. And that's why I'm here, to make sure that my community gets the very best that I have to offer and keep them in number 1 in the state.
All right. I mean, you are more informed than the average person is as far as the fire and rescue is concerned. There are we talked about what your ways that we could operate more efficiently, what some of the goals might be. Just from the outside looking in, are there changes that you would like to see made based upon your knowledge now? I mean, obviously, things will change once you get in there and you learn the inner workings of it. But, If you could make any changes to South Kitsap Fire and Rescue, what would they be?
Well, I think coming in, initially, I don't think I am in the position to make any drastic opinions on a change. I need to get in there and find out what changes can be made. So I think it would be foolish for me to say we're going to change this or that without really getting into the weeds with the commissioners. One of the nice things about having some commissioners that have been there for quite some time is they're going to bring a lot of history and experience as commissioners to the table. I'm going to have to lean on that in my first, 6 to 12 months to find out what we can do. I think it would be foolish just to come out and just say, I'm going to change this or I'm going to change that without having those detailed informations to support it. I don't like to make decisions with lack of information, and there's information out there, but I don't feel it's enough for me to start making assumptions on what can be done. Do we need to look at, putting money in different areas? Maybe we do. Do we need to be looking at some of the ways the operations operate? We might possibly need to do that. So I don't want to come off as having all the answers, but I want to come off as a person who's going to look for those answers and kind of look at it from a different viewpoint. As a business owner and a taxpayer, and I'm also a union member and a signatory union contractor. So I have a unique perspective on a lot of those areas. And so it's a great question, but I think it's too soon for me to answer that with any clarity. There's just a lot that goes on. They operate almost a $30 million budget, and there's a lot going on there. It's very labor intensive, so we need to take a look at those resources and how we're allocating them. I know that overtime is a big challenge there. How do we solve it? I don't have the answer, but I know it needs to be looked at. And so I think you're more asking what the challenges are, and do I have solutions for them right out the gate? No, I don't. I need to get in there and find out how we do that. And I think that's probably the better. I don't want it to be a safe answer, but it's the honest answer.
Question number 6 here is quite simply, what would your goals be for South Kitsap Fire and Rescue in the next if you're reelected, in the next 2 years as a commissioner?
I want to create another career station, which means 4 career personnel in there. 2 for the ambulance, 2 for the fire engine, and if we end up with a fire call, so 4 people go on it. We don't have to wait to rescue someone. We have a total of 4 career stations that have 4 people in them, and we have 3 more that have 2 people in them. That is not safe. That is not in the best interest of our community to have 2 people in a fire station. We need to have 4 people in the stations. The union is backing 3 people, but 3 people makes no sense, because if 2 people go on an ambulance, 1 person stays back. And in my day, I was comfortable, I was knowledgeable enough, and I was able to manage the second call. But the newer kids, they don't have the time and grade that I did. So I'm not comfortable with that. But at the end of the day, one of the things is make another fully 4-man paid station, enhance our volunteers to encourage them to be stronger and harder, and support the agency in anything that we try to do, and make sure that they stay a true partner in our agency. And number 3 is talk to people like the city council, the Kitsap County Builders Association, and the home builders, and ask them to help us write a impact fee governance that will help them and help us pay for some of this growth that we're experiencing in South Kitsap. And along with that, partner with some of these agencies that are out there that we're providing protection for, but we're not getting what we should be getting for, or not getting what we are providing for those agencies, and make sure that they step up and encourage that higher level of participation with funding, or whatever else they would offer. But at the end of the day, short of those things, we're going to continue to be a $2 fire department. That means $1.50 for the fire levy and 50 cents for the EMS levy, and we're going to be sitting on $2 for the rest of our lives if we don't get creative and make some kind of funding. Because in Olympia, they have no plan to help any agencies.
So the next question, in understanding and recognizing the fact that you're relatively new to the fire district, and as you mentioned, not privy to all the ins and outs, but what would be your goals if you were elected for, like, say, the first 2 years, the next 2 years? What would be your goals, and what would you like to see happen in the fire district?
Well, like I talked about before, number one, we've got to use our monies judiciously. The levy's a big one because when you see that almost half the community didn't support it, we've got to earn the trust of those people back because levies shouldn't be passing by 52%. A levy really should be passing by 60, 70%. You want that buy-in from the community that they trust you and they believe that the need's there and they're going to support that need. And I think that goes back to balance on the commission. We don't want commissions in any district to be lopsided of perspective. So, when I look at this district, I want to see more voices on that commission so we can have better perspective and ideas moving forward. So for me, one of my big things, like I said before, is getting into the commission. I've got to get up to speed on a lot of things that I'm not privy to, and it's hard to answer some of those questions because of that. And so I just want to make sure that I am going to be a team player on that commission, but I also want to be a guy who can ask the hard questions too. Why are we doing this? Should we be doing this? And is this right for the community? I think there's a misconception about the role of a commissioner. The role of a commissioner is to advocate for the community first. And I think a lot of people think you're supposed to advocate for the fire district. It's advocate for the community first and advocate for the fire district when it's appropriate. And so the hierarchy is very clear for me. And the hierarchy is the community is in charge, the commission is next in line, and then we work with the administration and the district. And so I want to make sure that we are maintaining that role to advocate on behalf of the community. That's really the number one thing, is to make sure that we are looking out for them.
So we are down to the last question, and this is I said the first one was tough, and the second one makes you think, but this very last one here, and you may end up repeating yourself a little bit, Mike, but why do you think you are the best choice for South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Fire Commissioner here in South Kitsap?
I've been doing the commissioner work for the last 12 years. I'm the person that will ask that tough question. I have no loyalty other than to South Kitsap Fire and Rescue community. My job is to make sure that they get what they pay for, to support them and have them support me and support this agency. Because at the end of the day, if they don't support us, we're going to be hard pressed to provide the valuable, wonderful service that we provide and encourage. Well, I'd like to encourage our career staff to be more involved in their community. This is their community. Whether they live in Egypt, this is still their community. We're the ones that pay their dollars and cents to get their paychecks, and so they can pay their bills and raise their children and so on. We are here for our community. We're not here for anyone else. And my job as a commissioner is to make sure that that is my sole role. But I also need to keep my career staff and my volunteer staff as safe as I possibly can. And 3 people in a station is not safe.
So everybody, that was Mike Aslava, and thank you for joining us, Mike. You had some good points and some compelling arguments there, and I want to remind everybody that we are coming up on the general election, which will take place on November 7th. November 7th is when the ballots are due. Anticipate the ballots dropping somewhere in the vicinity of October 20th, that week in there someplace. I would encourage everybody to check out this video, check out the other videos. If you live in the city limits, there are, I think there's 5 races in the city limits, and there's 4 races outside of the city limits. So there's a total of 9 different races that depend upon your voter support in. Watch the videos, read the pamphlets, become informed. And I think that's the most important thing, is to vote and to vote informed. Mike, thanks for joining me today. and look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, now we are down to the last question. I mean, it moves fast, and I don't know if you're keeping track of the questions, because they do, they do move pretty quickly. But you've done a great job of explaining, your perspective on things, in that, you're not the incumbent, and you don't have all the answers. Go figure. But why? So given that information, and given what you've said, I can kind of guess the answer to this next question. But why do you think that you're the best choice, or the best choice for the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Commissioner position?
Well, I think I bring a lot to the table. I bring a lot to the table from business experience. I bring a lot to the table from my fire experience from the private side. I bring a lot to the table from my civic endeavors locally here. I try to be quite involved. It's always been a passion of mine, the fire industry, but it's also been important to me to give back to the community. And this provides me an avenue that's really more in my wheelhouse. I've enjoyed working with the Chamber of Commerce, but if I'm being honest, the fire prevention industry is really where my heart lies. And so when the position came available, it's about timing. I had considered this position a couple of years ago, but with my children and all that, timing's everything. And so when this position came up this time, we had a conversation with my wife, and you've got to include your spouse, obviously, in these decisions to run for office. But the timing's right. And I think the timing's right for the district too. I think that they can use new perspectives on the commission, because they're seeing a decline in support. And I think that's a problem. And I don't want to see that with our fire district. One of the basic functions of government is to protect the citizens, and the fire industry and the fire district, in particular the firefighters and EMS, really falls into that. It's an important service. It's a service we have to have, but it's also a service we need to make sure is progressing and not getting stuck into 50-year-old, structures of system that they've had in place for so long. We need to make sure that we're able to ask the what-if questions so we can actually move forward and find new solutions. And, I don't know what all the solutions are, and I always like to be clear about that with people. There are solutions, and we have to find them. And if we stick with the same people over and over again, it's hard to move forward in that capacity, because we're not getting that different viewpoint. Sometimes you've got to have somebody to come in there and say, why are we doing this? And can we do it a different way? And how about this idea, or how about that idea? And even if those ideas don't necessarily stick, they're going to bring up the conversation, and we're going to be able to talk about it and say, well, that doesn't quite work. However, it could work if we do this or that. And so I want to bring that kind of levity to the conversation at the district, so we can have those conversations to move forward and not get stuck in this. One of the things in business that you never want to hear is, well, it's the way we've always done it. That's not a great attitude to have, and most businesses that have that attitude don't last very long. And I get that perception from the fire district. It's, well, we've always done it this way. Well, why? Why don't we think about doing things some other ways? I met with a lot of people from the district, had lunch with folks, I've met with the union board, and the overwhelming consensus I get is they would like to see change. And so, just from that perspective, they want to see change. Well, then we need to make a change. And so voting for me would be a step in the right direction to have change in the commission.
So, Robert, thank you for joining me today. It wasn't too painful, I hope. And, our objective is just to get people an opportunity to know who you are and what you stand for. So thanks for joining me today.
No, I appreciate that. And to your point, one of my biggest questions that I get asked all the time is, what does a fire commissioner do? So I'm glad that you're having these interviews, because most people don't know what the fire commissioner's office does. And really, to take it to a simplicity, it's an oversight committee, and that oversight committee is there to advocate for the community. And I want people to understand that, so they're a little more aware of what commissioners do on the fire district, and what their course of action is supposed to be regarding the community.
All right, absolutely. So, Robert, thanks again, and I look forward to working with you in the future. And good luck.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.